Welcome to the Becoming Superhuman podcast, where we interview extraordinary people to bring you the skills and strategies to overcome the impossible. And now, here's your host, Jonathan Levy.
What's up, super friends, and welcome to the show. Today, we're going to be talking about the art and science of building strong relationships. Now, your first inclination may be to think that there's nothing particularly superhuman about mastering relationships, but I'd have to disagree. After all, the aim of becoming superhuman is to be a well-rounded, grounded individual pursuing excellence in every aspect of his or her life, right? So, if you consider that many of the world's most successful and developed people attribute their success to strong relationships and support systems, it's clearly a worthwhile endeavor to excel at, building and maintaining them. My guest today is an expert in helping people form strong and lasting relationships. In the episode, we talk about how he pulled himself up from a very difficult upbringing and a broken home in drug-torn Medellin, Colombia. And he spent years training himself and contributing to the nation's largest ever study on what makes human relationships work. Through his website and his podcast, The Lasting Love Connection, and through his popular retreats and seminars, he's helped thousands of couples reach better communication and understanding. He was gracious enough to share with our audience his thoughts on why a strong, healthy relationship is an essential part of being superhuman, as well as tons of really impactful and practical ways to achieve that type of relationship. And now, without further ado, let me introduce you to Mr. Luis Congdon. Luis, welcome to the show. We're so excited to have you today.
It's exciting to be here, and thank you so much for having me on the show.
Absolute pleasure. I'm really looking forward to hearing some more about what you're doing and hopefully applying it to my own life. So I'm sure our audience will also love to apply it and love to learn from you.
Definitely.
So Luis, tell us a little bit about the path that led you to becoming a specialist in relationships.
Definitely. Well, I think in some ways it really starts in my childhood, coming from two homes that didn't really survive in the sense of, I was born and my mom died, and then I was born without a dad. Then I was adopted. And then my parents got divorced shortly thereafter. And I built a huge fear around relationships and sought this life of becoming a monk and through spirituality. But that life often left me with a sense of loneliness. Prayer and meditation, if you feel disconnected from other people, kind of leaves you in an estranged world. No matter how blissful you can be, there's just going to be times when you just feel kind of lonely when you don't have someone else to talk to. And in my path, during my time of living in a yogic ashram, I met a really amazing woman who just knocked me off my feet. And in our friendship and relationship and dating, I learned, wow, this is what I've been missing. This is what I've been searching for. And right then and there, I pretty much chose that a relationship was going to be a part of my spiritual path. And she broke my heart shortly thereafter and broke up with me and totally left me feeling kind of confused. Here on your show, you talk a lot about being superhuman, having the best of life in all areas. And in my relationship with her, I'd achieved a new pinnacle of what I felt was success. I felt happy, I felt connected, I was doing great spiritually, I was doing great with other people. And then she broke my heart. So totally just knocked me off my pedestal or the ideas that I had around love and what it was going to take. So I did what I usually do is I meditated on this idea, well, if I am the creator of my life, then I can also create an amazing relationship. Universe, help me find what it's going to take to have that. And I actually landed a job teaching relationship courses for one of the nation's largest research projects, looking at what does it take to have marital success. And here's the research. Let's apply it and work with over several thousand couples to see how this research helps and impacts the lives of married couples.
So I missed this step where you go from living in an ashram to teaching. I feel like I might have missed something there.
So yeah, I was living in the ashram. I started dating this woman. And once I started dating her, I pretty much knew that living the ashram was no longer going to be my life path. In that particular ashram, it wasn't that you couldn't date people. You know, there were married couples. There were other people that lived regular lives and lived in the ashram. I was there specifically with the idea that I wanted to try to become a monk, and that was my goal. And once I met this woman, I realized, you know, this path isn't going to be for me. I don't completely believe that we need to be vegetarians. I don't believe we need to be celibate. And I don't believe that prayer or meditation is going to be my life path. You know, the way that I'm going to evolve and have a superhuman life, so to speak. And so once I met her shortly thereafter, I left the ashram, got my own apartment, and was applying to jobs like crazy. And it's a really funny story, actually, because I applied to so many jobs. When I received phone calls for job interviews, I said, sure, I'll come in. But I didn't know what some of the job interviews were for. And I felt embarrassed telling the people, hey, I don't know what this job is. Can you please explain to me so that when I come in, I'm ready? So I went to this job interview, you know, being that way, interviewed for an hour. And the lady says, so what do you feel would make you great for an outreach specialist? And I felt so guilty in that moment. I said, you know, I've got to be really honest with you. I felt so incredibly guilty telling you that I didn't know what this job was. I figured throughout the interview, you would ask me so many leading questions that you'd give me the title of the job and I would know exactly what it was. That didn't happen. I'm so sorry that I've wasted your time, and I understand if you feel kind of upset with me. And she said, no worries. It's understandable. I really appreciate your honesty. Printed off a job description for me, which when I looked at it, it was all about going out and meeting people and introducing them into this research project and then handing them off to the actual people that conducted the research and worked with the people, which the people were couples that were married and had children, and we had to be married and have children together. And so I looked at that job description and I said, you know, I'm really sorry again, but this is not the kind of job that I'm looking for. I have a very strong intention of having a job where I can get to know people, really meet them, find out what makes them tick, and discover more about myself through that process as well. And she said, no worries, you know, I hear you. I think I have another job that might work for you. Talk about luck, right?
Right.
She printed off another job description and handed it to me. And she said, I don't want you to answer me now, but take a look at the job description. And if you like it, I'd love to call you back in for another job interview with some of my other team members. When I looked at the job, it was exactly what I wanted. It was called a family advocate. It was a cross between being a counselor and a social worker. And it was a really incredible job. While working that job, this thing happened again where I saw somebody teaching these classes to the couples, and I saw them doing it 3 times a week. And I thought, oh my God, I don't want to just sit with couples and do the social work and counseling stuff. I want to teach classes, and I want to be in front of 10, 20 couples talking to them about their relationships, and only that for 5-10 hours a week. And so I did exactly what I usually do when I want something, is I really meditated on it, and I felt what it would be like to have that in my body. And then I said, universe, please provide me with that. This sounds like it would be amazing for me. And a month later, this guy who was teaching the classes, his grandmother got incredibly sick. And I came into work. My boss comes up to me and says, hey, Luis, the guy that teaches the classes, his grandma's really sick. He had to fly off this morning just like that. And we don't have somebody this evening to teach the courses. We need somebody who's trained in the research, who's bilingual, and who's a male, and who can facilitate tonight.
Wow.
Can you please be that guy?
That's incredible.
And I said, yes, I would love to. I was put on the spot, though, because I had to actually teach in Spanish. And at that time, I was incredibly afraid and nervous to be in front of people speaking in Spanish. So not only was I provided with an opportunity to do something that I'd asked for, I was also given kind of the challenge to stop being afraid and scared of speaking in Spanish and kind of owning that part of myself.
I think what's most interesting and inspiring about your story is both times you found yourself at a crossroads where you essentially reached out to the universe. You kind of opened your heart and opened your mind to opportunity, and it was kind of put in front of you. So it's, a lot of people believe, myself included, in the law of attraction, or some people call it the secret, but the idea that if you really want something, you have to visualize it and you have to open yourself to opportunities, and they somehow magically kind of present themselves. So that's, in a nutshell, the story of my life as well. And I really love that you touched upon it.
Thank you.
So what about the actual tactics that you learn? I mean, I really love being someone who's a life hacker and someone who's kind of very interested in shortcuts to getting the most out of life. I mean, I love that you were teaching all this really, really sophisticated advanced research right off the bat. Skip the PhD, get in and actually work with people. What did you learn? What is the research about? And what are the different takeaways that you discovered in terms of creating better, more lasting relationships?
Definitely. That's a really fantastic question, Jonathan. And before you jump into that, as we're talking about life hacks and the law of attraction, I really want to bring up something that for me in this moment rings really true, and I just want to loop to it. When I was 5 years old, my mother was killed. She was a drug addict. And afterwards, I was left homeless with an uncle who was incredibly poor. And we traveled from home to home and would sleep in people's homes. And he would live in their houses. In exchange for a roof, he would work for them. And that was essentially the deal. And we went from a lot of different homes. Now, when I was adopted at 8, I didn't really feel a sense of estrangement that I'd left my country, that I was in the United States and I didn't speak English, that I didn't have my biological or real parents. But later on in life, it really came back to haunt me. This pain of, why did my mother leave? Why did I have to be homeless? Why did I have to be adopted? And I just want to loop to this because when we talk about the law of attraction, we get really focused on creating the results and the things that we want. But I also think that it's really important we do this piece on re-imaging what has occurred and what does it mean. So when I really reviewed what the death of my mother meant, I really got to a place that it meant that I had an incredibly loving mother who was willing to give up her own life because she knew that she couldn't change for me. And I had such a wonderful mother that she was always going to be around for me, and she became my angel. And that is part of what gave me the fortitude and the strength to go back to Colombia when I was 18, completely on my own, relearn Spanish and reunite with a family that honestly I didn't really know anymore. And I went to some really scary places by putting myself in such space of vulnerability of traveling to a foreign country and relearning a language. And I just think it's really important for people when we talk about the law of attraction that we also take some interest in how can we flip the significance of the things that are currently bothering us so that they become a gift. And then we can get into a really strong space of gratitude. I hope that was appropriate to bring that up, but I really wanted to share that.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
As far as the relationships and what I learned while teaching the relationship courses is one of the key things that we can learn by studying people by the hundreds or thousands is that success leaves clues. We want to look for those clues, and then we want to try to mimic those clues. And when we're talking about personal things like a relationship, it can be incredibly challenging to pick those things out. So some of the things that we look at is we have in the Gottman research, they have this little thing called turn towards, not away. That means when your partner does this little small bid for attention, for example, you and your partner are walking down the street and she says, oh, look at that car. And maybe you're distracted because you're looking at your phone. I want you to know that if you don't actually acknowledge your partner in that moment, you're actually creating a little point of pain for your partner. Whereas if you just look away from your phone for a moment and say, well, that's a fascinating car. I've never seen a car like that. And then you go back to your phone, you're acknowledging and validating your partner's presence and their thoughts. And just a small thing like that can be calculated to a point where we can start looking at a relationship and knowing if it's going to be successful or not.
Right.
Some of the research has also found that there's this thing called the 7-to-1 ratio. So for every 7 negative put downs or criticisms that we say to our partner, they get sick 1 time a year. And that's really fascinating work because we also know that couples that are considered healthy and successful and have longevity in their relationship, and also we can look at their bodies and we can test their hormone levels and urine, everything that's going on in their body, and we can go, okay, this is a happy person. What we found with those particular couples who can be rated as happy on all levels is they have a 5-to-1 ratio. So for every one negative thing that they say to their partner, they say 5 positive things. So that's a heavy, heavy amount of emphasis put on being positive and loving and caring and attentive to your partner.
Wow. So really, I mean, literally an aspect of becoming superhuman, being more healthy, being more immune, is actually being in a healthy relationship with a lot of positivity.
Right. We also know that couples who report being unhappy in the relationship will report being unhappy at work. And it doesn't work the other way. People who are happy at work do not certainly report that they're happier in the relationship. There is no correlation between happiness at work and happiness in your relationship, but your relationship can really impact your work. And that's one of the reasons why I reached out to you, Jonathan, because when I think about becoming superhuman, I think about being successful on all levels, firing at all cylinders, and having longevity in that state of mind and physiology and that mind state and body and health.
That's so interesting because I spend a lot of time thinking about the kind of force multipliers that the world's top performers all have in common. And it ultimately comes down to usually 3 things. One of them is obviously exercise. You know, Richard Branson and many, many other people are known for getting up at 5 a.m. and working out before they head into the office. The second one seems to be meditation. And the third one, more often than not, is a strong relationship with a strong partner. So I think that's really, really interesting. That's a super great takeaway that, you know, if you want to be superhuman, you want to conquer your professional life and you want to conquer your emotional state, it really makes a huge difference to have someone in your corner and have a functional, healthy relationship.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And, you know, there's research out there now. I had a doctor on my show, Dr. Paul J. Zak, and his research on oxytocin, which is the love hormone and the chemical really responsible for our happiness. One of the things that he found is people that get 8 hugs a day are actually happier and will fully satiate their oxytocin levels. So it doesn't have to be a partner that we're getting those hugs from or that touch from. But if we're in a relationship, it's just a little bit more guaranteed and built into our daily lives. And that's ideally when we're talking about being successful and happy and being superhuman, all the things that make us that way are built into our life. So we don't have to go out of our way to get those things.
Absolutely. It just makes it a lot more convenient. I actually want to ask you, Luis. So I once read a great book on management by a guy named Ferdinand Fournier. And I remember thinking that relationships are not so different from management in the workplace, as terrible as that may sound. But in terms of the skills and behaviors, they're kind of very, very similar. And one of the biggest takeaways in that book was that there are many, many steps that you have to try out and go through before you actually fire someone or kind of kick them out of the family, so to speak. And the last step of that is admitting that you failed, not them, right? You failed to turn things around. So I've always wondered, you know, you see people in a relationship that's clearly not working, and you can usually pretty quickly pick up on the negative energy between two people. And I've always wondered, is that a failure to communicate? Essentially, is it safe to say that every relationship could be made to work, or is it just that sometimes a relationship is unfixable?
Well, when you using that analogy by Ferdinand, Swami Kriyananda, who was one of the teachers that I followed for some time, wrote a really great book on relationships. And he said, a relationship is very much like a job, and you're choosing an employer, and you want to know if the person can do the job. And there are times when you hire someone at your company and that person is promising, but they can't do the job. What I do know is Ferdinand is really great on with one of the things that we want to do when something isn't working is try to resolve the problem without blame and using our ability to take responsibility for what's occurring. And the more that we do that, the more likely that we're going to find people for the job, and ideally one specific partner at some point that can do the job and really works for us. But I don't think that you can make every relationship work with everyone. There's so many people on the planet and so many people coming in and out of our lives that there's no way that I could ever say, I can team up any 2 people and make them happy. It's just not going to work. We're humans. We need variety. And there's a reason why people connect and a reason why they disconnect.
Yeah. So the logical follow-up, and I do have a good bit of self-interest here coming from someone who is single. How do we go about finding that right partner for us who can, as you said, fill that job? And what are the things that we look out for to know that these aren't just bumps in the beginning of the road, but rather this isn't going to work or this is going to work?
One of the first things that I did when I was trying to date and learn about dating is I studied a lot. And one of the common things that I found from dating experts, and something that I really trust, is you make a list of some of the qualities that you really want to see in a partner. And if you've dated before, you probably know some of the things that you really didn't like about your previous partners. And I want you to turn those up on their head, So if you don't like that your previous ex was greedy, then write down, I like somebody who's generous. And write down some of those other qualities. And then you try to embody and become those qualities and be that type of person, because like attracts like. And so whatever you're exuding, you will just naturally draw people to you. There's studies that say the 5 people closest to you, you tend to emulate.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a key to being superhuman as well, is surround yourself with people who are successful in ways that you would like to be.
Absolutely.
So when we're doing that, that's one of the first things I advise people when I'm working with someone who's interested in the dating aspect. The other thing is find movies or images or music that makes you feel and depicts the type of relationship that you would like. Maybe it doesn't depict the kind of relationship that you would like through, say, for example, music, but maybe it makes you feel some of those emotions. That's a really great place to start. And then, when you are in a relationship or when you meet somebody, you'll recognize that this person is matching up to those feelings and some of that list that you wrote down. Because what you write down and what you get clear on makes it a lot easier for you to notice it and recognize it. Being in a healthy relationship can be easy to notice by how you feel while you're in that relationship. And then there's also behavioral training that's really important, because if you're feeling crummy, but you're somebody who gets mad a lot, or you're somebody who doesn't take responsibility for your own life and for your own actions, then it's time to kind of reevaluate. But it's never really that much about the person that you're in a relationship. It's about who you're being in the relationship. And the more that you try to be that type of person, I guarantee you, the more that you're going to attract that type of person that you're wanting in your relationship.
Wow. Those are really powerful words of insight. Absolutely. It reminds me a little bit of, you hear about all these kinds of pickup artists. And ultimately, I read a kind of interesting study that ultimately what they're doing is increasing people's confidence and encouraging them to have better lifestyles, right? You get aside from all the cheesy pickup lines, and you go into a lot of what these motivational speakers are talking about is lead the kind of life that attracts the opposite sex, which means be a happy person, be someone who does interesting things, and you will find someone who does interesting and inspiring things.
Exactly. I tried the whole pickup thing because until the age of 24, I didn't really date. And I was the kind of guy that a woman would have to grab by the collar and yank me in and say, I like you, take me on a date and kiss me. And then she would still have to kiss me.
Right.
Like I was just so nervous. And I tried reading a few pickup things and they just felt kind of weird. I wasn't very good at it. And one night while I was out at a bar trying to learn how to approach people, this guy walked up to me and he said, hey, you're trying to meet women, aren't you? And I said, yeah. And he said, you're trying that pickup stuff, aren't you? And I said, well, yeah, a little bit. And he goes, it's not really working, is it? And I said, no. And I said, no. And he said, okay, come here. And he kind of put his arm around my shoulder. And then he said, point to me a guy that you think is doing well, and I'll tell you if he's not. And so I pointed at a guy who was talking to a really gorgeous woman who I totally got blown off by. And I said, I think he's doing great. And he said, I think he's doing horrible. And I said, what do you mean? He's talking to her. She's smiling. They're looking at each other. Those look like all the things you want. They're engaged. And he said, well, who's doing more of the talking? And I said, him. And he said, it looks like he's doing about 95% of the talking. Why is that an interesting conversation for her? At some point, if she's not giving back and there's no real connection and back and forth, there isn't a relationship. And I said, yeah. And he goes, you seem like a pretty genuine guy to me. So I want to show you a quick little trick. And I said, okay, what is that? And he said, well, relationships are really about connection. So I want you to connect to me. I'm going to tell you something and then connect to whatever I tell you. So I shared a little story with him, and he said, wow, that's really cool. I can tell you're somebody who's really fascinated and engaged in life. And that's a lot like me. Like last week, I went skydiving, and that was one of the ways that I got engaged in my life. And it was really exciting. Do you like adventure? I don't remember kind of how he continued.
Right.
And so he kind of went back and forth with this. And he said, every time that I talk, pick out my emotion, pick out what fascinates you about me, and then connect with that and use that. So if I tell you I went to a ball game with my dad and we had a great time, what emotion am I sharing? And connect with that emotion. So I did that. And he said, great, you're doing awesome, you know. So I got that down and I walked away from him, and I saw this beautiful, beautiful woman that I just like throughout the night. I did not approach her because I consistently saw her blow people off. And I went up to her, I made a little joke. She kind of joked back with me. Then I just got really genuine with her when I heard her say something. I saw like a piece of jewelry or something on her. And I said, wow, you know, that's really cool that you're wearing that. That's like a Native American piece, you know. And I work at a bookstore where we sell things like that. And I think it's really cool you're wearing that. Immediately, we started having a really awesome time. And that is the cool thing about learning how to connect with people, because the tactics that you use to get in a relationship are going to be the same tactics you use to keep one.
Yeah, that's actually a really good segue. I was meaning to ask you, you know, we talked a little bit about some of the behaviors, but what are some of the other majorly impactful behaviors or habits that people in healthy relationships use?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the key ones is taking responsibility for your own life. Another one that I really like is telling the minute truth. That one comes directly from Dr. Gay Hendricks, but it's also something that comes from a variety of different teachers. I just happen to learn it from him. And telling the minute truth is really about telling another person as much as you can about yourself in a way that is never blaming them, but really informing them about what's going on in your body, in your mind, and in your heart. So if you and I are talking and something that you said made me feel uneasy in my body, I would say, I heard you say that, and maybe I heard it in the wrong way, but when you said that, I felt so uncomfortable in my body, and I don't know what that's about. Or I noticed my hand twitch when you say that, or my neck got tense. But there's nothing there that is blaming you for what you said. I am owning my own way of responding to that and creating curiosity. That leads me to the next thing is just every single couple I've ever seen that I consider to be successful, they're curious, deeply curious about each other. Every couple I've met that I qualify as an awesome couple says every single day I can learn something new about my partner. She is always growing. And I'm always interested, what else can I learn about him, her? There's just something I always want to know more. And when I see that, I know immediately, wow, this person really cares about who they're with. And because they're so interested in learning about them, if there's a problem, they're going to learn how to fix that issue, which is kind of the next thing. So when we talk about knowing and being curious about your partner, Dr. John and Julie Gottman refer to that as love mapping. So a love map is a map of your partner's internal world, their fears, their dreams, their hopes. And we want to consistently update that information. I've actually created an awesome little game for that, which I'm more than happy to give everybody in the audience that game and a list of some awesome date nights. So you can go out on a date with your partner and use that as well, because every successful couple I've found has a habit of taking each other out on dates. Mm-hmm. Either weekly dates or monthly dates. And then while you're on this date, you can play this fun little game to update your love map of your partner, because over time, your partner changes. So your partner's best friend might not be that friend when they had an argument on Thursday, but then now it's Sunday and you guys have been so busy, wrapped up with everything, you haven't heard that they had an argument and your partner is really struggling with that friendship, or that her favorite restaurant got taken over by some new company and she doesn't want to eat there. So then next week you offer to take her to that restaurant. She says, oh my God, I don't want to go there. So that's new information. And the more that we can have up-to-date information on our partner, the better we will be able to navigate the way that we treat and are with them, and also specifically target behaviors to make them happy, to make them feel loved. Because all happy couples I have found are incredibly focused on how can I make my partner feel safe, loved, and comforted.
That's another actually really good question. Is I've read a lot about kind of impactful people and their relationships. And one of the things that really comes up is my partner helps me be better. My partner helps me grow. But I think that's a very fine line between trying to change somebody and actually promoting their growth and inspiring them to be a better person. Where do you draw the line there? And how does someone go about doing that without triggering those kind of negative feelings that someone's trying to change you or that you aren't enough for them the way that you currently are?
You know, a lot of times whenever we come up against something in our partner that we really don't like or have a strong disdain towards, it's really a pointer back to ourselves, because whatever we have an issue with is something that we have an issue with. And the common denominator there is ourselves, because my partner might be exhibiting a behavior that I didn't like in all these 5 people. And the common denominator with all those people is me. So what is it that I'm disliking around that behavior? Trying to change our partner, it just creates a lot of challenges and can make somebody very resistant towards changing. And when we try to change that person, they're probably not going to. Whereas maybe we'll role model some of the behaviors that we like, or we'll reward our partner when they exude the behaviors that we like. We can tell them, hey, I really appreciate that you did this or that, and keep focusing and keep the attention on the things that are working. And most likely, because most people want to do what feels good, they're going to start directing their behaviors to doing more of that. If we feel like our partner is really trying to change us and boxing us and cornering us, it might be a good point for us to try to inform our partner, hey, I've been feeling really uncomfortable. I've been having the sense that you don't like a certain behavior, and I want to talk to you about it.
Mm-hmm. So positive reinforcement is a big aspect of it, kind of knowing what you're bringing to the table in terms of baggage, it sounds like, and realizing that you're reflecting a lot of your own concerns. And when something triggers a chord, it's probably because of your background more than anything.
Exactly. And again, it just goes back to the more that we embody and are in tune with our own characteristics and desires of what success and happiness is, and the more that we're in tune with that, the more that our partner will model that back to us.
Wow. Okay. Absolutely. So, Louis, could you share with us some of the most worthwhile books on finding and maintaining healthy relationships?
Definitely. First book, right? Just hands down, my favorite book on relationships is a book called Conscious Loving by Dr. Gay and Kathleen Hendricks. My favorite, just one of the life-changing books when it comes to relationships. Also really like the work by Dr. John and Julie Gottman. You can kind of pick up any of their books. It's research heavy and a little bit more dry for me, but it's still interesting to look at the research because there is research and there has been thousands and thousands of couples documented in labs at the University of Washington. And Gottman is the first person to really do that and then document it and be accredited and backed by a university as having bona fide research, that's been quantified. So his stuff is great. Also really like Dr. Gary Chapman, The 5 Love Languages. And I also really, lastly, one of my other favorite books is Don Miguel Ruiz's book, The 4 Agreements. It's Toltec wisdom. It's just wonderful, very simple to read, and some simple tenets of life that if we live more by it, we're more likely to have happiness in ourselves and in turn in our relationships.
Fantastic. And we'll go ahead and link to those in the show notes, which brings me to my next question. If people want to get in touch with you, book a seminar, learn more, listen to your podcast, what links would you want us to send them and put in the show notes?
Yeah, for anybody who's wanting to have lasting love in their life, whether you're single or in a relationship, you can find me at lastingloveconnection.com. And you can also type in Lasting Love Connection in Google, and my podcast and website will pop up. I have a podcast that has featured some of the greatest minds on relationships and a variety of other people in different fields to help you have more insight on your relationship.
Excellent. So I'm going to check that out personally. And Luis, I want to thank you so much for your time. It's been a real pleasure, and I think we've all learned a lot today. So thank you very, very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jonathan. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, you have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
So that's it for this week's episode, guys. If you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed recording it, please head over to iTunes and or Stitcher and leave us a great written review. It really, really brightens our day to see those reviews. The other thing is, I just wanted to let you guys know that as promised, my new book, Become a Super Learner, is now available on Amazon. It's actually climbing up the charts really, really quickly. So we would love to give you guys a free copy of the first 10 chapters and help you accelerate your learning and improve your memory a little bit. So head over to becomingasuperhuman.com. And if you subscribe to our email list using the form on the bottom or the window that opens up when you visit the site, we will automatically send you those first free 10 chapters to enjoy. So head over to becomingasuperhuman.com, drop your email in one of the forms, and we hope you enjoy the book. We'll see you guys next week.
Thanks for tuning in to the Becoming Superhuman podcast. For more great skills and strategies, or for links to any of the resources mentioned in this episode, visit www.becomingasuperhuman.com/podcast. We'll see you next time.